Behind the Mirror of Music with Dannii Cohen.
Hello, and welcome to Behind the Mirror of Music. My name is Dannii Cohen. This week's guest is Ellen Fitzpatrick.
Ellen Fitzpatrick is an actor, singer, teacher, producer, stage director, and the founder of the Icicle Creek New Play Festival. He also starred in over 100 different productions, both on and off Broadway, including Sweeney Todd, Sunset Boulevard, Driving Miss Daisy, Aspects of Love, Damn Yankees, Oliver, Hello Dolly, and Les Miserables. He also originated the role of the priest in Whistle Down the Wind and the role of Lord Farleigh in The Scarlet Pimpernel. Currently, he is touring with his yearly one-man production of Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol.
I hope you will enjoy the show.
Hi,
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good.
So, I'm like close to what one might term semi-retirement, but I in 5 weeks I'm debuting my solo adaptation of Charles Dickens' Great Expectations at a theater here in North Seattle, and then all through the month of December, I'll be performing my solo adaptation of Dickens' A Christmas Carol in several venues here in Washington State and several venues in Michigan. And that goes right up till Christmas Eve. And then in the beginning of February, I believe I have a stage musical at some theater that's going to work out as a 3-month contract. It hasn't quite been finalized yet. It doesn't even have a contract, but so that'll take me to the end of April, and then it will be spring and summer again, and we'll see what happens then.
Sounds like some wonderful projects. It's always great to do Dickens adaptations because they're such strong stories.
Yeah, well, I mean, A Christmas Carol is a no-brainer because virtually every theater, I don't know about in England, but in America, every regional theater, every city has some theater that does Christmas Carol every single Christmas, and it ends up being their cash cow for the season and subsidizes all their other work during the year. So it's done a lot. So doing a solo version for theaters that can't afford to do a full production or just want it, um, it's easy to sell, and it seems to be very welcome. Regarding the Great Expectations one, having kind of done this Christmas Carol one, which I wrote 4 years ago, I thought, let me try my hand at another solo show, and then I saw that Eddie Izzard had been performing his one-man solo productions of Great Expectations, written by his brother, in England, and then I think he gave it a shot, maybe in the States, uh, before he turned his hand to doing his solo Hamlet. I thought, well, if Eddie Izzard adapted it and managed to do it, it can be done. So I spent a few months last year writing the my own adaptation, and I've been refining it over the past 5 or 6 weeks and getting it into kind of shape. And now I have another 5 weeks to memorize it and stage it and get ready to present it.
Hope it works out because it's such a wonderful story. It's been not done as many as often as the others. That's a real shame.
Right, for sure, for sure. But yeah, it's the one I know. I mean, I don't really know too many other Dickens. David Copperfield to a degree, but now I know Great Expectations pretty thoroughly, having spent so much time with it, with the David Lean's movie adaptation and Dickens' novel, of course, and there are a couple of other uh, filmed versions of it as well. So it is a story that is accessible and people tend to like now. Even it's almost it's going to be 200 years soon and since he wrote it. So it's got some staying power. You can certainly grant it that.
Yes, I think some stories have the power to stay for centuries.
Hmm. Definitely so. Surely going back to the Greeks, I mean, you still have, let alone Shakespeare, but even going back 2,000 years, you have a lot of theaters doing adaptations of the Greeks, of Aeschylus and Sophocles and all those guys from antiquity.
I think a lot of stories, even fairy tales that we still have today, come from those stories from the Greeks.
Definitely so, right?
Yeah.
I mean, these are the basic stories of mankind that have been told for be way beyond 2,000 years. These essential stories of love and lust and passion and betrayal and ambition and all these themes that have been with man since he passed them down through oral traditions and then through written traditions. But they're great, and yeah, I don't think there's any story you see on anywhere in soap operas or movies or otherwise that in some form or another wasn't first presented a long, long, long time ago.
I mean, you can see that in new musicals like Hadestown, that it all comes back.
Mm-hmm. For sure, for sure.
How did you fall in love with music and theater and acting?
Well, gosh, as a very young boy, I enjoyed, the music of the '60s and record albums. I think we're all drawn to most people are drawn to music innately, instinctively, in some primal fashion. Um, and I would sing a little bit. I liked to sing as a child and sang in fifth grade. We actually had like a little singing class, and then I actually got on stage in fifth grade and sixth grade and did some so I was about 10 and I did some plays and some improvisations, and then so there were musicals and plays and singing at age 10, and I really liked it. I thought it was a great way to express myself. I wasn't scared about standing on a stage and being seen. I liked the attention of an audience. And then in high school, I wanted to get back to it when I was a sophomore. My first year, my freshman year, I had my attention on a lot of other things, sports and otherwise. But then in my sophomore year, I began auditioning, and then I was fully enmeshed in it by my third year, my junior year in high school, and I was doing all the shows in the drama department, musicals like classic musicals like The Music Man, Meredith Willson's The Music Man, and Frank Lesser's Guys and Dolls, and Lerner and Lowe's My Fair Lady, and mixed with plays, um, and also scenes from plays that we presented in literary assemblies. But I lived it and was saturated with it all through high school, and then went on to college at university, and wasn't sure I was going to pursue it, but my instinct was to be drawn to music, and I was in the Glee Club for a year and auditioned for shows and just kept going from musical to play to musical to play, and then graduated and looked around and thought, I wonder, well, what do I do now? Do I actually try to make a living at this? And I I auditioned for a production of the musical 1776. About
Yes.
an idealized version of what happened when we signed the Declaration of Independence here. And I did that show for 6 months. And at the end of those 6 months, I auditioned for that was a non-union, non-equity theater. I auditioned for an equity theater for a production of My Fair Lady, and I got cast in it and got offered my equity card. And then I took the card, and that was sort of a turning point because it meant that if I was going to continue with it, I had to be more serious about it and lay out a plan and a strategy for pursuing the career. And then just a few months later, I was in New York. Um, had not quite turned 22. I was still in the last month of my 21st year, and in New York, and hit the ground running and kept pursuing it, and have done so for the last 47 years. Um, just but I was dedicated to it and studied voice and continued to do musicals and did plays, and my career has been a mix of both plays and musicals. And I'm not sure I'm drawn to one or the other. If I do a number of musicals in a row, then I start to feel like very hungry to do a play where there is no music, because in a musical you are disciplined by a conductor and by the songs. There's only so much you can do. So there's a restrictions in a way, but and in a play, I mean, it's between you and the director, but you are freed up to a degree. So after a number of musicals, I want to do a play, and then after a number of plays, I want to do a musical because the energy is so different. The cast energy backstage is often different, and there's a different relationship between a company and the audience when you're singing. Audiences who come to musicals have slightly different expectations, I think. But I love them both, and I'm happy to do whatever comes along. It's not like those of us who are fortunate enough to have been able to do both forms. Um, we I think I feel lucky that I wasn't restricted or pigeonholed to one or the other. So and you know we can't none of most of us who aren't stars, we can't say no to too many projects. The only times I've said no to a project was when, on those few occasions, extraordinary occasions, really, when I was able to, got offered two things at the same time, and then was able actually to make a choice. But mostly it's, I want to work. This theater has offered me this work, and it's either a musical or a play, and I'm happy to say yes and hope for the best. And usually it's been for the best. You never really know when you're in a collaborative art form quite what it's going to be like when you're in that room, finally in rehearsal with people, with a director and a company, and because each one has its own particular chemistry and magic or lack thereof, and you always go in hoping for the best, uh, being collegial and collaborative, and hoping that it works out to be a positive experience. And by far, my my opportunities have ended up being positive. But one never forgets that it doesn't have to be that way, because you are creating art, and in the creation of art, anything can happen.
You made your debut in Broadway debut in Les Miserables. I saw the red on your side.
I did, yes. I spent the first few years in New York kind of getting my bearings when I was in my 20s. I was working, but there were some survival jobs. And then when I turned 29, going on 30, I started to get a number of opportunities in Philadelphia, which is about 90 minutes south of New York City. And I liked Philadelphia, and it was a smaller size, but it had a great number of opportunities on stage as well as on camera. So I joined Screen Actors Guild and AFTRA then, and then I was a member of all three unions. And I figured actually I was going to spend maybe the rest of my life and career in Philadelphia. I bought a house there and continued to work there constantly. And then I stopped in New York um, in around 1988, 1990, and auditioned for a show out of the blue. Because I was never auditioning in New York in those days. I was doing everything in Philadelphia. And I got this show in New York, and I got an agent out of it, and suddenly I was being seen for a lot of things. I got an off-Broadway show, a revival of the Rothschilds, which was performed at Circle in the Square downtown and was a huge success and garnered a great deal of attention. And I did that for a year, and then went right into my first Broadway show, which was the original production of Les Miserables. It had been running for about 2 years, and there were replacements that were being made. And I auditioned for it and got and played the role of Thénardier, the master of the house. And it's a wonderful experience. It was rather terrifying to be in a Broadway show that had been running, where I had to step in and be on the same level of energy and expertise as my fellow players who had been doing it for a long, long time. That was very challenging, but I did it and got through it and improved as the weeks went on. And getting that first Broadway show does sort of open doors for you, because once you have a Broadway credit, you are taken more seriously as being a legitimate performer who is good enough to do Broadway shows. So then you get seen for other Broadway shows. So I ended up doing, I think, 8 altogether during my 20-year span of working in New York on Broadway. I would do a mix of Broadway and off-Broadway and a number of national tours, but I kept working very steadily. And then I was 50 and was invited to Seattle to play Sweeney Todd in Sweeney Todd here at the Fifth Avenue Theater, which is a major musical house here in Seattle. And I had done the role before at the Goodspeed Opera House in East Haddam, Connecticut, 10 years before, and I was happy to do it again. And it was a remarkable production, and I loved revisiting Sondheim once again. I've done a lot of Sondheim musicals, though Sweeney is my favorite and the one which I know backwards and forwards. I really know the score very deeply and some of the finer points of that score. So I did it again, and I loved Seattle and the Pacific Northwest, and I had certainly proven myself in New York, and I thought, I kind of like it here, and I think there's a lot of opportunities to do both musicals and plays here in Seattle. And I kind of was bi-coastal for between New York and Seattle for 10 years, and then the last how many years is that? 8 years, I think. I've been wholly living in Seattle, though not exclusively working here. I've worked in Florida a few times, and Alabama at the Alabama Shakespeare Festival. I did Little Shop of Horrors there a couple of years ago. So I'll go out of town occasionally to do a show, but there's been enough work in Seattle to keep me occupied, and a lot of new work was and still is, as far as I know, being developed here. It's a good place to do work because it's far enough out of New York that work can be done without being too carefully scrutinized by people in New York and on the East Coast. So shows can be developed without being under a microscope. And the work that's done here is great. There are some terrific actors here, terrific actors, terrific stage actors, terrific actors, singers. So I'm in very good company and with a great deal of people who I know almost everyone now except the younger ones, but I've been working with these people on and off for 18 years, and it's a thrill to always be reunited with them in a new project, and generally with some director with whom I've worked previously as well.
So you worked with Stephen Sondheim. What was it like to work with him?
Well, I didn't really work with him one-on-one. I mean, I met him the first time I did the first time I did Sweeney Todd at the Goodspeed Opera House. He came and saw the production, and then I met him again years later when I did Passion, which we performed on television for PBS, live from Lincoln Center. I played Colonel Ricci, who was the cousin to Fosca, which was played by Patti Lupone. And Michael Cerveris was in the production, as well as Audra McDonald. And we did the show on stage for audiences, but it was also broadcast live from Lincoln Center. And Stephen Sondheim came to that production, and I re-met him there and chatted with him there. But my work on his material did not involve him hands-on, unfortunately. But I'm sure he is as beloved with your audiences and in England as he is here,
Yes.
where he's considered, a god. Um, the sophistication of the things he created, extraordinary. The first show I ever saw on Broadway when I was 15 in 1970 was Company, and I was astonished by it. I knew there were complexities in relationships he was talking about that I, at 15, could not fully understand, but I knew they were extraordinarily sophisticated, and more so than anything I had been familiar with Rodgers and Hammerstein and other composers. So I became an immediate fan of Sondheim's work, and then proceeded to educate myself as the years went by, and fell in love also with a little night music and
Yes.
Into the Woods, Sunday in the Park, all shows which I ended up doing and being thrilled to do. I'm very fortunate that I've gotten to do so many Sondheim works in the Sondheim canon, and always loved the experience, and would welcome the opportunity to do anything in the future as well. I've aged out of doing Sweeney Todd now, having done it 3 times, but I wouldn't mind, playing the judge someday before that becomes too late as well.
Follies would also be a good show.
Follies, yeah, a great show. I've never been in Follies. I've seen it a few times. I've seen recordings of it. Actually, the Follies, the my memory of the main production of Follies, which I saw, was one I saw in England, in London, with I think it starred Millicent Martin, um, many years ago, not
Yes.
too long after its debut. But yeah, I loved it. And then I saw there was a Broadway revival, which I saw with the late Treat Williams and Greg Harrison in it, and then a number of recordings of Follies. But yes, I love that show too. And then Merrily We Roll Along, which has gotten a lot of interest recently. I did not see that on stage. I wasn't in New York to see its recent, very successful revival, but I saw a video from the London revival, which is the only production of that I've seen. It was on, not on stage, but on video.
Yes, because the thing that we had just discussed Greek history stories. Sometimes also had frogs with this loaded with it.
Yes, frogs.
Yes.
I years and so when I first in college, I became somewhat familiar. though did not perform any of the works that he that he wrote, like Frogs and his other thoughts from those classics. But I've read them, and it's wonderful to see him. I mean, he was kind of brilliant even when he first was writing.
Yes.
He became more nuanced and smarter and smarter with his work. But it's always delicious and always worth reviving, even the very early stuff.
I think Frog was revived and edited many years later.
Nathan Lane.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. I did not see that one. The only trouble with I being living in the Pacific Northwest is my opportunities to get to New York to see some of the work there is really limited. So I miss a lot of things. And usually out here, I mean, we have a big touring house that gets most of everything. So I rely on that touring house at the Paramount mostly to get a tour in, so I can see what has done well in New York. We attended The Girl from the North Country, which uses a lot of Bob Dylan songs. I saw that a couple of months ago, and I'm going to see this revival of Funny Girl in a couple of weeks. Not with the New York star, but with this young woman who's gotten terrific reviews on the road playing Fanny. So I'm looking forward to that. And there's lots of other things coming in. There's Anne Juliet, which is coming here, which I want to see. And what else? Just everything of note gets to go move on and tour. And it's whatever tours is probably eventually going to come to Seattle. I did see Hadestown a couple of years ago when it came through here. I saw the all-female version of 1776 that came through here. I saw Clue just a couple of weeks ago, which was not a musical, not the musical version, but the play version, which is touring here in the States and which has gotten great reviews and is selling out wherever it stops. So sooner or later, by and large, everything that is worth seeing in the popular sense will come through here. The more esoteric stuff, which certainly has great value of its own, that does not end up touring, I don't get to see, unfortunately. But most everything, sooner or later, will come here.
I think Kimberly Akimbo is also becoming on your radar.
It is, that indeed is on my radar. There is a video available of that, which I'm been trying to get a hold of the video, but now it's been announced that thanks for bringing that up. That show is also coming to the Paramount here later, sometime in 2025, and I'll definitely be seeing that as well. So yeah, if it got any kind of acknowledgement at the Tony Awards here, just a nomination, I usually will want to see it. I'll feel that it's worthy of being seen. So I keep my fingers crossed that someone will put out a national tour of it and I'll get to see it sooner or later. The Hadestown I'd waited quite some time to see and was definitely worth it. I'm pretty sure the tour was as good and as powerful as the production that had been on Broadway.
You also starred in the original Whistle Down the Wind. But,
Yes, Whistle, that was an interesting event. That was one of the few times when I actually did get offered two shows at the same time. One of the shows, Harold Prince called to ask me if I would play some ensemble tertiary roles in Whistle Down the Wind, on which he was collaborating with Andrew Lloyd Webber. But at the same time, the same week, I auditioned for Alan Ayckbourn, who had written and was directing by Jeeves, based on the Wodehaus's Jeeves and Wooster series, and that was the role of Jeeves. So it was the titular character. So it was a real conundrum, a real dilemma to have to choose between one or the other. The Hal Prince offer for the Lloyd Webber show, however, contained a clause that when the show completed its out-of-town tryout in Washington, D.C. and moved to Broadway, I was going to be promoted to doing one of the lead roles of the father. So it was really still a toss-up because By Jeeves was going to be off Broadway. It did not have real Broadway intentions. But I desperately loved the idea of being directed by Alan Ayckbourn and working on a new work of his, but I had to pick one or the other, so I went with Whistle Down the Wind, and this opportunity to work with Andrew Lloyd Webber and Jim Steinman, who wrote the lyrics, and Harold Prince. I mean, Harold Prince being a legend. So we went into rehearsal and in Washington, D.C. at the National Theater, and things went well for a while. But then I wasn't quite sure whether things were going well.
Oh.
And we opened, and I believe the show, if I recall correctly, got rather lackluster reviews or mixed reviews, let's say. And then we suddenly were informed that the show was not going to go on to Broadway. So the entire run of that had been just in DC, and the Broadway thing was off. And then I obviously felt that, I had probably made the wrong decision. But, one makes decisions based on whatever information one has at the time. You cannot see into the future. And then, of course, the show years later, I know was revived with some changes, and did rather well in London and on its British tour. And then it toured the States here again, and toured Seattle, where I saw its revival. It was quite an interesting experience after so many years had passed to see the show from the other side of the footlights, and it was quite interesting. And then Andrew Lloyd Webber and I, of course, I wouldn't say we palled around exactly, but I did get to do his production of Aspects of Love in Edmonton, Alberta, and then it moved to Toronto, where it had originally not done particularly well on Broadway. So this was a bit of a revival, reimagined completely differently with director Robin Phillips, and then it went on a national tour. I did the Chicago portion and then left, but I spent a year doing that show, and then also the second national tour of Sunset Boulevard. This one starring Petula Clark, and directed by Susan Schulman. Sunset was a difficult show for them to make money on. So it was reimagined with a much simpler set than they had on Broadway and in London, eliminating all the hydraulics and the massive sets moving in and out, because it was very difficult to tour a show that had that many technical requirements. And our production was simplified, but kept all of the score. And that was a very successful tour and made money for its producers and its backers, and for Mr. Lloyd Webber as well. And I quite enjoyed that. We spent 18 months out onto 16 out of 18 months touring the States. I believe 32 or 33 cities were visited, and Petula and the production got great reviews wherever we went. It was who was quite well beloved and well accepted. I played Max von Mayerling, her chauffeur and valet, and who we find out was her first husband in a series of husbands. Um, it was interesting playing that role. I loved singing the operatic arias that Max gets to sing that Mr. Lloyd Webber wrote. Though the role itself, I found after months and months and months, was kind of isolating in that you really he really only addresses one other character, Joe, which is Norma's paramour, and doesn't get any interaction with any of the rest of the company. So it's a kind of a lonely place to be
Yes.
as the months and months and months go by. And I wished I was in the Hollywood party segments. So after 16 months of that run, I was very honored and happy to have worked so closely with Petula and on another Lloyd Webber show. But its time had come, and I bid it adieu. But yes, I guess my musical experience has been touched as much by Andrew Lloyd Webber as by Stephen Sondheim, and also by Frank Wildhorn. I did the Scarlet Pimpernel for its first year on Broadway, and though I didn't do any other main stage shows by Frank Wildhorn, I did workshop and help develop a couple of other shows of his. So yeah, I mean, now as I speak about it, it's pleasant and fun to be reminded of some of the many great composers and lyricists and uh, librettists that I've had the opportunity to work with over the past 45 years or so.
Interesting that some of these shows also always stay around, like Sunset Boulevard, coming back to Broadway now with a revival.
Right. Yes. This with in London, it was with Nicole. I'm not sure. It was
Nicole Scherzinger, yes.
Yeah, Scherzinger, right? Who had been one of the Spice Girls? Is that
And
right?
Pussycat Doll.
Pussycat Doll. Okay.
Yes.
Right. Yeah, I think it's and I guess it's coming to Broadway this fall in its own really reduced minimalist version.
Completely
Um,
stripped down.
I'm glad when anything gets revived. When if a show cannot be produced, first of all, many shows were, uh, some critics and others said that they were overproduced during the era of Miss Saigon and Phantom, etc. That too much money was being spent on sets and other aspects of things, and that and obviously the economy, the economics of producing have changed and gotten so outrageous, particularly on Broadway and in New York, that if you want to do some shows, you've got to re-envision them and do them on a smaller scale. I saw the original Chicago. It was redone in a so-called minimalist version, and it's done extremely well. I think it may be the longest running show on Broadway now that Phantom closed. But you got to when Sweeney Todd was seen in a smaller production that Patti Lupone did as Mrs. Lovett with with fewer elements. It cost them less, but they were still able to produce it. And producing it, sometimes you do have to, it can be re-envisioned in a different way. And I think it'll be interesting to see how Sunset does in New York. Sometimes, as I'm sure you and your viewers are aware, something will do extremely well in London, and then the exact same thing will hit North America, United States, not do so well on Broadway, and because the audiences are not exactly the same. So,
The-
but often it is, you never know.
It's the reverse also too. Sometimes a massive Broadway hit doesn't work in the West End as well.
Right, right. It goes both ways for sure. I remember. I mean, I'm just remembering one of the. I saw Blood Brothers in New
Yes.
York years and years and years ago, which I know was a huge hit in England, all over. But I don't recall it doing particularly well in the States. So, but I also acknowledge and recognize that that particular musical dealt with its observations about a class system, which I think Americans are less savvy about than those who remember it, grew up in it in the United Kingdom.
I think the class system is different in America.
Yeah, I mean, we have it. I'm not sure it's quite so delineated, and people are trying to always move within it. Whereas I'm no expert on it. I certainly can't state that, people in a certain class may feel that they can't escape their class. I don't know, but we have a fair amount of social mobility here. Um, but still people get stuck. It's not easy. It's not easy to move around because I mean I'm getting political here, but those in power, they like to retain their power and their wealth, and they don't like it being challenged or diluted in any way. So I will leave that statement where it lays.
Talking about class systems and that's history. It reminds me, Sal, you also did Driving Miss Daisy with James Earl Jones.
I did, yes. Mr. Jones, as you know, passed away a
Yes.
couple of weeks ago. While I was in New York doing Memphis, the musical on Broadway about how white radio stations began playing African American uh, music, after despite their um, generally, decades of segregated mindset. While I was doing Memphis, a director with whom I'd worked contacted my agent and said that he would be directing the first Broadway production of Driving Miss Daisy, because Miss Daisy, Alfred Eerie's play, had only been off Broadway up till that point. Of course, having been done in regional theaters as well, and having been done for years and years and years, and even made into major motion picture with Morgan Freeman, but it had never been on Broadway. So it was someone's brilliant idea to get James Earl Jones and Vanessa Redgrave on board to play those parts and for a limited run. And he asked me if I would be willing to stand by for Boyd Gaines in the role of Booley. And it was a play, which was great on Broadway. And not a difficult assignment, standing by, and something I kind of jumped at the opportunity. So all of us were rehearsing for 4 weeks with David Esbjornson, the director. He had formerly been the artistic director of Seattle Repertory Theater and now was freelancing again on Broadway and in regional theaters. And I really enjoyed being in a room with Mr. Jones and Miss Redgrave, and they were really, really lovely people. They had their handlers, as it were, who protected them and made sure that they were not harassed. But we were all part of the same company and collaborating in the rehearsal hall and then in the John Golden Theater when we got there. And I got to spend some time backstage with both of them. Uh, Vanessa Redgrave and I celebrated our birthdays together. I have a lot of wonderful pictures of us doing that. And Mr. Jones was he's a wonderful, wonderful actor, but also, as I posted in a number of Facebook comments, more than his being this absolutely enormous talent, he was such a loving, open, warm, lovely human being, in that I could bring anyone backstage uh, who had seen the show or had not seen the show for that matter to meet him, and his generosity and hospitality, he would invite them in and sit them down and chat, and then I would be the one who acted as the chaperone to end the conversation, because I was so conscious of Mr. Jones's time and the fact that he seemed to be willing to go on and on and on uh, ad infinitum with these guests, and I know he would want to rest or go home, but he was great, and I cherish the fact that I got to work both with such extraordinary actors as he and Miss Redgrave. Great experience, great play, really well received. Later made into a video with Mr. Jones, but Miss Redgrave had stepped away, and Angela Lansbury replaced her on the video. But a good representation of what our director had created with those two stars.
Wonderful to hear about artists being so kind to fellow artists and general public, because sometimes you hear stories you don't even know if they're true about artists being very difficult.
Unless you were there,
Yes.
you just never really know. And since you mentioned that, I mean, I did get to do, as I mentioned, Passion with Patti Lupone,
Yes.
and Patti had kind of a. There had been people who had spoke of her as being difficult. There's hundreds of actors on stage and screen spoken of as being difficult, and I didn't know what to expect, and I'd heard some stories, so I went in slightly apprehensive. But during my entire experience with her, rehearsing and performing that show, she was lovely to me. Lonnie Price, who had been actually in the original cast of Merrily We Roll Along, he directed that production. It was very limited. We only did a few performances live, and then one for television. She was Not only was she a superb Fosca, truly superb, and it's recorded, and your viewers can see it if they search for it on YouTube from 2005, Passion live from Lincoln Center. Not only was she an extraordinary Fosca, she was really very collaborative, lovely person who displayed to me zero ego. I had a duet with her um, late in the second act, and it was, I mean, how extraordinary to be able to say that you have sung with Patti Lupone. It was a great experience, and I for one have nothing remotely negative to say about her. She's starring right now as we speak in a play on Broadway, the Roommate,
Yes.
with Mia Farrow, and I don't know how it's going. I think it just opened about a week ago, but she's still on the boards at 74. I think she is, and
Yes.
good for her. So.
Yes.
But you're right. You never, unless you were in the room, anything can be said about any person because of the way one, you never know what someone's agenda is unless you were there.
True, and sometimes just things that you've already heard about and from all the artists themselves, and then people just make up entire stories because they don't like a certain artist.
It's true, and the sensationalism of horrible stories sells tabloids and blogs, and it draws people's attention. I mean, it is the perennial clickbait. So it's people like to see sordid, nasty stories about people more than, oh, they're lovely people. You know, what else are you going to say? So
Yes.
it's a shame. It's I guess it's part of the darker side of human nature.
Yes, true. It's getting out more because I think people just like to rant online.
I'm
Even
afraid so. Yeah, and that and it's I doubt it's going to get much better. You know, the internet opened kind of a Pandora's box of our ability to have your thoughts heard by millions of people, whether they're worthy of hearing or not. And I don't know how you close that door unless the entire grid comes crashing down, and you know we get bombed back to the Stone Ages. But it is what it is, and every new technology presents its challenges, and hopefully we're able to deal with those challenges without completely dissolving as a civilization.
I think in the beginning of internet, people used to be more positive, but in especially the last few years, I think just negativity has become the main course on the internet. You can't even post a picture of a cat without people saying anything negative.
I cannot dispute that one iota. I mean, I think it's difficult for social media platform, those who oversee them, to know quite the gray area of how censure uh, comes in. Their desire not to have things go awry and become volatile and incendiary, but this is opposed to the right of free expression and free speech. And do you want the internet to be narrowly controlled as it is in, you know, certain other countries, and where people can't say what they want? It'll be an ongoing argument and struggle and challenge for the certainly for the rest of our lives, and you know, well into the future.
What are some of your favorite stage memories?
My favorite stage memories.
Yes.
Well, mostly it's the shows that for whatever reason brought me a moment of bliss, as close to bliss as one gets, in that one is playing a part that one knows, uh, one has a good grasp of the interior of the character, how the character fits into the show, and is within one's abilities to sing or act. Um, just great roles. I mean, I played King Henry the Second in The Lion in Winter, which I loved playing. I played René Gallimard, the French diplomat, in David Henry Huang's play M. Butterfly, which was a wonderful experience. I played Claudius in Hamlet, and felt that it was a success. Um, you know, successful roles where you get through an evening and through a run where you know that as objectively as you can, that you are serving the play very well and are being well received in it, apart from reviews, because you know, as they say, if you take the good reviews you have to take the bad. But one gets a sense of, at least I have over years and years of being in this business, of knowing when um, I'm doing particularly good work. Those three plays I mentioned were certainly highlights. I loved playing Sweeney Todd the second time, that the here in Seattle. I felt I was at the peak of my vocal power and acting experience, that I was able to really uh, do it do it right. Um, I loved playing A Little Night Music because I think it's a beautiful show. It's an interesting character, Frederick, who is, you know, suffering a middle age crisis, and you know, has too young a bride and has to figure out that he should be with someone closer to his own age. What else? I did company when I was 25 years old as Bobby, and I loved it because it was my first Sondheim, and that was a blissful experience to not not only remember 10 years previously when I had first seen the show on Broadway, but then to get to play it and really hear that score and explore it was great. So yeah, it's been about, and I could probably, if I looked at my chronology and resume to see all the plays, there are at least a dozen or 2 dozen where the character itself really interested me and where I felt that I fulfilled my own expectations and rose to the challenge of doing that play. And more often than not, that they were part of an experience where I was working with a director who really knew what she or he was doing, or I had full, complete confidence in their ability to bring this, to flesh it out, and with a company of fellow actors who were also working at their highest level, so that the whole thing was there was cohesion, there was a unity to this work of art that we were successfully presenting.
When you played Sweeney Todd, how did you see his character? What was his backstory for you?
Well, I think his character is extremely sympathetic. I one, not having had been railroaded by the justice system and sent thousands of miles away to a penal colony while my wife stayed home and was assaulted and raped and went mad. One, you have to find something in you that can trigger that same kind of desire for vengeance. And I played him as someone who'd been deeply, deeply hurt and was obsessive, and came back and was single-minded on that revenge. The character is dark. I mean, in that regard, in that his obsession is dark and it tends towards wanting to kill. But the whole point was, I wanted at the end that audience to feel full sympathy for this character, that to forget that he had killed so many people and innocents along the way on his journey, but to so thoroughly sympathize with his need, his compulsion for that revenge, that they could accept it to a degree, not fully feel sorry for the fellow, but tend not to be so put off that they despise him and his actions and were scandalized by it. So my feeling is that in all my incarnations of that character, I was able at the end, when I held the corpse, the dead body of my wife Lucy in my arms, that the audience was weeping along with me at the loss. And perhaps not so as Toby slid my razor against my own throat, that it had to end that way, but that it was a tragedy in the sense that this was a good man who was destroyed by outside forces, as well as his own flaw of needing revenge at all costs, no matter the price.
That's a deep story. So many elements there. His revenge and also Mrs. Love's manipulation of him in a way to yeah.
True enough. True enough.
Yes.
Yes. I wish I was a little disappointed with the movie version that was done by Tim Burton a number of years ago. Not only did I miss the ensemble being present, which I think is a
Yes.
huge part of, even though Mr. Sondheim approved it, you said it was okay. I missed the ensemble, and I also think I prefer my Sweeneys to be older. I think
Yes.
a guy who has really lived. I want Sweeney to be 50 or up, ideally. So it's just my own personal taste. But I like the stolid guy who's been around forever kind of feel to it.
The same with Mrs. Lovett. I think she also has to be. I think she used to be older than him in the original versions.
Yes, they did a version recently here where there was here in Seattle where there was a more than a 20-year age gap between the older Mrs. Lovett and the younger Sweeney, and I did not get to see that production, but it that concept and that casting surprised me. I felt I yeah, I would like them to be closer in age, even if she is a bit older. You really you got to maintain, I don't know, something that, well, I mean, there is some aspect of some romantic thing there that probably is even consummated. So I don't know. I like them slightly
I think
closer in age in the
Angela
production on
Lansbury
Broadway.
said they shared a bed, so
Apparently
yes.
so. So yes.
I think in the original she was a bit, I think 4 or 5 years older than George Hearn in the original version.
Right.
And
Probably
then
so.
Carrie, yes.
Right. Yeah. Len's still with us at I think he's in his early 90s maybe. But I think he's still stepping out and occasionally will do a
Yes.
performance. Yeah, I think he performed just a few months ago. So good for him. I'm all for the longevity of actors. Maybe the theater keeps them alive a little bit.
I
I
think
hope
so.
so.
Do you still have a dream role or something you wish you could have played?
I've thought about that occasionally. You know, the one part I always figured I would play and never had the opportunity to play was Don Quixote in Man of La Mancha.
Yes.
And I came close a couple of times, and it didn't quite work out. I have been in it. I played the governor who sings "Hail Knight of the Woeful Countenance," so I got to be in the show and live it, experience it, which was great. But that no, I and now I feel like it's kind of an opportunity that has passed by. It's not like, you know, there's been plenty of roles, so it's not a question of deep regret. But I think that's one thing I would have liked to have done. There's also a role in the musical of Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, that the role that Michael Caine plays in the film, that I kind of was found appealing and might be a little too old for that, but maybe not. But I like that score, and that's a fun show to do, as far as I can tell. And that's pretty much it. But no, I feel, look, I've done 250 roles in my career. I know that only because I've been preparing a page on a website run by the Entertainment Community Fund, which is an organization here in the States that operates in New York that they maintain the legacy. They not only help actors in need, but they maintain legacy pages for a number of actors who will they characterize their careers. They create pages that flesh out their careers and how they want to share anecdotes of their careers with a younger generation. And I'm participating in that project. So in the recent last few months, I've had to go through every project I ever worked on since I was a boy and put those projects up by title and year and character and anecdote onto this site. So all the things I've done are in my mind, and I had over 250 entries. It took a long time, and to also find photographs and programs and other memorabilia associated with each project. Quite a lot of time research, time intensive research, but yeah. So there, I feel I have done plenty of roles. If there are a few in the future, great, but there's nothing that I feel like I need to do or desperately needed to have done.
Is there anything about your career that you wish to share that hasn't been mentioned yet?
No, I don't think so. I've 95% of my career has been on the stage. I'd say roughly 2/3 were musicals, either revivals or brand new original musicals. Um, and then I guess about 1/3 were plays, new plays, and revivals of plays. And then maybe 5%, maybe a little more, have been on camera work on some feature films, some indie films, student films, um, and some television. I appeared on some soap opera guest spots back in the 80s and a few television series. Um, and now some web series and other things like that. I I I really enjoy performing on camera because it's so different. I mean, you still are authentic and expressing truth, but you do it in a smaller way. The camera, you don't have to reach out
Yeah.
across footlights to touch an audience. I mean, at the Fifth Avenue Theater, where I've done 27 shows here in Seattle. That's a 2,200 seat theater. So to be touch the person in the back row of the furthest balcony requires a certain magnitude of performance, which is challenging. But the on camera requirement of just being small enough because the camera will pick up everything. I like being able to dial, still keeping the truth, but dialing it down to just what is sufficient for the camera. And also the fact that, I mean, you only have to do it once or twice, and then it's recorded forever, as opposed to a show where, I mean, Sunset Boulevard that I mentioned that I did for 16 months.
Yes.
That was 600 performances, I think, 400 performances in a year, like 600 performances. That's a lot to do over and over and over again. Try to duplicate it, not go crazy, always make it appear, as if it's being done for the first time in a fresh way. Really challenging the
Absolutely.
duplication required by stage work. So I've loved the on-camera stuff. I love it. I always wanted to do more, but though I wasn't pigeonholed as a stage actor, there were always more opportunities to to be on stage than movies and television. but I've done some of that too. I just did a movie a week ago, actually, a 10-minute film that's going to be used as a trailer for potentially a new TV series, which would be a dramedy. And you know, you never know where that would go, but I loved being, you know, on set and the different dynamics of that. You work really hard. You know, you're on set for 12 hours and you're repeating things through repetitive takes, but once it's done and you wrap, you know, everybody smiles and you walk away, and someday they call you back and you get to sit in a theater and see the final results. So I love that. So I think that's, gosh, that's the entirety of my career so far.
We also have something called the Icicle Creek Festival that you created.
I did. Back within a few months of my starting to spend time here in Seattle, I was exposed to a town that's 2 hours east of here, just on the other side of the Cascades, called Leavenworth, Washington. Not to be confused with Leavenworth, Kansas, where the prison is. Leavenworth, Washington is a town that looks was created to look just like a town in Bavaria. So it's all gingerbread cutouts. It looks very Germanic, and oompa bands and lots of German restaurants. And as I say, very much like what a town you would find in actual German Bavaria. And it looked like an ideal place kind of to sequester playwrights and directors and actors and give them an opportunity to develop new work, which was an interest of mine. So I did what was necessary to secure funding and interest of the community, and some boards of the Icicle Creek Music Center there. And in 2007, we began every summer workshopping and developing new plays for the American theater. We would workshop and develop 2 new plays, bring the playwrights from anywhere across the United States, once from Canada, once from London even, and bring them there for a week to 10 days to workshop their plays, and then they would present the plays to a local audience at the end of the week, and then the plays would come to Seattle and be presented at ACT Contemporary Theater for a performance so that the Seattle audience could see them. Um, and and then the plays would go off, you know, like little birds being pushed out of the nest, and they would get produced somewhere else. And literally, we did it. I did it every year. I was the founding producing artistic director for 11 years in a row through 2018. And during that time, uh, literally 3/4, 75% of the plays we workshopped and developed went on to be produced in regional theaters, including, I guess, the real feather in our caps was Samuel D. Hunter's play The Whale, which not only went on to uh, be performed in regional theaters and off Broadway in New York at, I believe, Playwrights Horizons. It was also produced as a major motion picture that was released a couple of years ago, and you know, won the Academy Award for Best Actor. So we did some great work. We really supported um, playwrights from all over the country, as well as giving some work to directors and local actors. It's a thing I was very proud of, and do I miss it? I don't know. It's very difficult. You know, 11 years is a long time, and artistic directing, being artistic director that is so hands-on as I was, and who always has to look for funding, is an extreme challenge that I grew slightly weary of. So around 2018, it was pretty much time to pack it up. And luckily, having done so, only 2 years later, we were in the middle of a pandemic and the shutdown. So I think the timing was good while it lasted, and we accomplished a great deal, and it was a big achievement and one that I will always remain proud of.
It's been such a rewarding thing to do in all those years, especially when so many things went on to a good success.
I was, I was delighted to see any play get picked up and move on. There wasn't much I could do to help a play or not help it once it had been produced. I relied on each playwright and her or his agent or manager to push the play forward, and some were able to do so magnificently well, and others, they existed ephemerally in time, and they had their moment at the festival, and it didn't mean that the playwright stopped writing. I think everyone who came there felt encouraged and nurtured to continue with their work. They were always highly respected. We treated them as the focal point, the real, the most honored guest in the festival. And we are all there to assist them and help them any way we could. We felt that being rather in the woods there in this Bavarian type setting was would be helpful. They could be sequestered there without the distractions that they would have if we were doing this in, say, downtown Seattle or in some city. That they were away from their families and their own homes, that they could concentrate, focus completely on their play.
Wonderful thing to do. It must have been great starting point for some more beginning writers to have such a caring community around them for a few weeks.
We got some very nice testimonial letters where they praised the festival and their experience with us. I mean, I don't know, the American theater has changed dramatically since the end of the pandemic shutdown here, but there were many theaters that have new play programs, and were conducted differently. I liked the model for ours, as in the taking them to a place without distractions. But I applaud all the many theaters, including several here in Seattle, including the Fifth Avenue and the Village Theater, which both constantly nurturing new musicals, as well as Seattle Rep and Act Theater that are developing new plays and in their own programs, which may have taken a hit financially in the aftermath of the shutdown, and may be slightly reduced temporarily. But in general, these are great programs. You always, a play doesn't just emerge out of nowhere. I wasn't really aware of the amount of time it takes to get a play from its first draft through to being seen by an audience. The workshop productions, the rewrites, the dramaturgy, the first full workshop production seen by an audience until it finally gets its world premiere, which can be, 2 years down the pike if they're fortunate. So it's quite a process. And as I say, I applaud the established theaters that go out of their way to have programs to develop new work.
Someone who has been on stage for so many years, would you have a message for musical theater fans or theater fans and audiences?
Well, I I'm not sure what I would say. I would say that the theater right now in fall of 2024 it has seen its challenges, and it's some theaters are struggling a bit. And I would say to audience members and your viewers that they should go out and support theater in any way they can. Just see shows and pay full price if you can, and subscribe to theaters that are trying to create art in a difficult environment. The theater's always been struggling to a degree, but now more than ever. And your interest and attention and your hard-earned dollars spent on it, it would be so welcome to theaters everywhere. And go there and enjoy it and love it and be respectful of it and realize it's, a sacred place that might not be around forever except for your support and your love and respect for it.
Thank you so much for this interview and the wonderful message.
It's my pleasure. I'm honored to speak to you and to your listeners.
It was a wonderful conversation, and also thank you for sharing your knowledge and memories.
Behind the Mirror of Music with Dannii Cohen.